Good evening. It's November 2nd, 2023, and we're continuing our discussions on The Chosen, created by Dallas Jenkins. And this evening, we're going to be exploring Season 3, Episode 4, Clean, Part 1. Okay, it's not our Part 1, but this is a two-part, one-part thing. So anyways, this should be fun. Because remember, during this series, my dad, John Warren, my brother, Jim Warren, and myself, we're going to be having conversation, and we'll be reflecting on the things that have impacted us along our way. Okay, so again, welcome to the Sons of the Father on the Dusty Feet. And before we forget, if you find these kinds of podcasts useful, then click the subscribe button. Reminders, they're just for you. But also, if you think that these might be useful to others, then click the like button, because that is the way that YouTube chooses to share these to more people if they wish. Okay, Clean, Part 1, yeah? Let's remember the disciples, right? The big 12 in this story, right? But we need to remember that in the actual scripture story, that there's a group of 70 that head out for this particular event, where they go out and minister to the areas around. So they were also very much followers of Jesus. We just always tend to focus on the Big 12. It seems to be our thing to do. So again, for me, it's context. Yeah. Okay. So, Daddy-O, what kicked you off? This is going to be loaded. There's a bunch of stuff, and we'll probably warn some folks up front that this Clean Part 1 could be more parts of Part 1. Yeah. So there you go.
Well, talk about loaded. This episode was the two episodes. It just goes beyond. What was interesting to me is what Jesus did. He sent them out 2 by 2, 35 by 35. I don't know how he sent them out, but and then he just left them hanging out there to get to know each other. And that's what happened. That's the way we get to know somebody, is spending time with them and watching them in action, especially when they're doing something they've never done before. They're terrified. You saw in some of the miracles that some of the disciples did, they were terrified. The whole situation, and each one of them handled it in their own way. Mm-hmm. Whether it's Simon the Zealot or Matthew the tax collector, each one handled it in their own way. But what I thought was incredibly interesting was them putting. We saw Mary and Tamara together, and Mary's still trying to get her to sell your jewelry, for criminy sakes. You don't need it. And she makes it clear that she ain't parting with that. I'm sure in further episodes we'll see more of why that is. But then, Mary and her own life, and for them getting to know each other. And then they bring in Zebedee, and he's got them testing the oil and doing these interesting things. Why Jesus was over, they were, running him off the cliff, trying to. These guys were out doing their new assignment, which was to practice what they saw, and it was much deeper than that that I saw. And you saw that Yusuf, the rabbi, and Jairus uh, connecting. Neither one of them wanted to say, "Oh yeah, I'm, count me in. I'm a follower of Jesus." They were kind of putting it out, but they were holding it back. And then, and that story is developing, and so much of it, the different and the rabbis and their whole session, and there's so many things going on in this episode. There's like 5 things that are happening, and Jesus is nowhere. Not only there's no cell phones, in case some of your young listeners thought there were. There ain't no cell phone, so they're not talking. And Jesus is doing his own thing, and they're out there stumbling along, but building these deep relationships and discovering things about themselves that they didn't know. And I just,
Hmm.
to me, I could spend the whole time, the whole whatever time we have, just talking about how it impacted me personally. So, Jim, how did God speak to you on this?
Hmm. It was interesting. We were having a discussion at work the other day. Uh, some of the things that they told us in our job, in our interview. Here's kind of what we're looking at doing, and what we're actually doing right now. It's like, wait, we didn't talk about this kind of thing. And I remember when I first started at Home Depot almost 5 years ago. They kind of give you the basics, and then they put you out on the floor, and then you're just kind of winging it, is what we felt like. But it's that OJT, on the job training, that really helps you solidify, the things you learn when you're in, basics. Bob, you in military basic
Yeah.
training
Oh yeah.
doesn't give you the totality of everything you're going to do,
No.
but it gives you the core, and you start to develop more of how you're going to do it, kind of thing. And I
Mm.
think that's what I was watching with the disciples. Is Jesus said, okay, here's the basics. When you get out there, like you said, Dad, all of a sudden now you're having to ask questions, and ask for assistance and help. That's why I think Jesus did it 2 by 2, is he wanted them to go out and work together, and play off each other's strengths, and, complement each other's weaknesses, kinds of things. I loved watching James heal, that young man. And it's like, here's a guy who struggles with his own disability, helping
Mm.
someone else, and the joy in that, and seeing it happen, kind of thing. And like you said, Dad, they're almost their surprise, when it worked, they really got healed. And what that feels like, you know
Mm.
um you you don't get to know somebody by somebody telling you. I absolutely agree. You got to get in there and do it with them, and then you really get to know what they're like and who they are. And I think Jesus was letting them do that, also letting them experience, what it means to be out there, doing the work. It isn't all easy and
Mm.
exciting, and everybody loves you, kind of thing. Yes, people were being healed and people were joyful, but it's a lot of work. Um, and there's sacrifice involved. And like you said, Dad, you saw that with Tamara. All of a sudden, there's this, there are things she's still hanging on to, and I
Mm.
think we're gonna see that deeper. What are the things that we hang on to, that we say, okay, Jesus, you can have this part, but not this part. This part's mine. You know, you can have that. Uh, and we're going to begin to understand, as Jesus unveils more of the life of sacrifice and what that's going to entail. So yeah, it's a great episode, and there's way more in there, but I'll just lead off with that.
Yeah. The 2x2, Dad, you mentioned, of course, which is important. The in Jewish culture, two is a witness. Okay, so you can have one guy saying one thing, but if you have two guys saying it, there is a cultural credibility involved. Okay, and for them, it's easier to absorb that way. Okay, so they're addressing a practical cultural element. Dad and I, we were mentioning something before this started, James, and one of the things was that this was they mentioned it in that banter around the table when they're all talking about and how it's impacted them, and there's some interesting different responses in that, and I think it's Big James that says that we're out, we got it, and then we only had this for a short time.
Yeah,
The power that they had, and I think we don't realize that that's the truth. We have this think that these guys did this, and now they all have the power that they all had. But if we go back to the original statement that I started this show off with, was there were 35 pairs that were out there. So if that was in fact a permanent thing, then you had a bunch of guys not in that 12 still going around and healing and doing stuff. That's not impossible. We have no documentation of that. We have nothing that alludes to that in the story. It very much so. So it was temporary to them, and he was very aware of that. And it's a short statement, but I didn't want to get lost.
Yeah.
There's that confliction of some of them had easier walks. In other words, they said, well, you had it easy. You were there, so people talked to you, where us, they wanted to run us out. Jesus even addressed that. Not in the Chosen, but he does it in the real story. And he says, hey, if there's resistance, what do? Leave. Just knock the dust of sandals off your sandals and just leave. Don't curse at them. Don't preach at them. Don't convict them. Don't chastise them. No, leave. Just knock the dust off your sandals and walk away. And there were those who had that, and of course we prefer to watch the confrontation scene rather than the fact of maybe they said, hey, I'm going to do it, and it says, okay, and just get up and walk away. But how do you do that silently? Because a number of those scenes were what? Yeah. Without words. But the struggle that they had was interesting in the pairings. We think of things so easily, and then in this story being told by Dallas, which is wonderful, that these human elements come up, and then you have Simon the Zealot and Matthew the tax collector paired up. Jesus has a unique sense of humor, and it's interesting, and the dynamics that play out, because Tamar and Mary, again, they've been together, but they're isolated a little bit more without that action going on in between. And Tamar's background, very diverse. She's been places. She's done things. So she has something to add as well. The stuff that she has isn't just, there's memories to this. There's family, there's lineage, there's, which is very important culturally. It's very important that we remember where we're from. So it's going to be a struggle to balance part of that with this. And you're right. I think we're going to see that down the road. The Josephus of the Joseph and Jarius interaction. We have the two of them. Dad, you mentioned that dance back and forth of um, recognizing something special about this guy. With Jarius as a scribe, which is interesting because that's what he is, that he has gone in and he thinks he sees Messiah in the Torah, which is great. We have this set because even the 12 don't see it, and Yosef is trying to see it. So when that's going on, we then have the Sanhedrin scene where Shemuel and Shimel are going up and giving their speech to the Sanhedrin to set up why they need to go after Jesus. Why do you think there was the resistance that they had? Because this is a loaded question, because we're going to have to look at ourselves on this. But what do you think the resistance to what this man was saying? We had an echo of it in the last one with Jesus and him declaring himself to be the Son of Man, which is a loaded statement, and not the only one to declare that, mind you. But what do you think? What more is in that, Dad?
Are you talking about the Sanhedrin when they were doing? Because the leaders couldn't even agree among themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. So you're telling me this is political? Well, it's got that, it's leaning that way. So they've got two different agendas. Their agenda is to overthrow or to gain power in the group, but Shmuel just wants to go after Jesus.
Right.
So you don't even have the connection there, and to me, that's going to be very interesting how Dallas puts all this together as they move forward with this, because you've got it makes more sense the way that they went after Jesus, taking him over to the Roman leaders and getting them, because they knew that if they went after him with the people, they might not be able to get that same result. And I found that interesting, that they couldn't even agree. I found the two Yusuf and Jarius doing their little tap dance, trying to make their comments without setting themselves up. Oh, did you read what I wrote? Well, yeah, I did. And he's like, "Oh my gosh, you read that? That means I'm toast." And then when he said it makes sense, and all the things that are going, and all the apostles, the 70, whatever, are out there doing their own thing, when Jesus is orchestrating all of this to happen in his own plan for it, or the Father's plan, which is what he gave to Jesus. I'm not sure. Maybe he'll explain more of that, but I thought that was interesting how it's all starting to come together, and to make sense, having seen all the episodes of series 3, obviously none of series 4 yet, but even that, I'm fascinated by how it's evolving, and how each one of them they've got a plan, and just as Peter, he's freaking out, that the whole thing's falling apart as far as he's going. Peter says, Jesus says, let him go. He's got things he needs to deal with, and that's another part of the story. So, Jim, what do you got?
I remember a quote from, and I don't know if it's I think it's a real quote from World War II when I want to say it was with regard to Japan and the U.S. having not been a part of World War II yet. And then after Pearl Harbor, and the one, I think it was a general said, "I'm afraid we've woken a sleeping giant." That whole thing of, what really is taking place here. I think seeing this episode, I can't remember. I just remember writing down my notes. Who was it that said, Jesus of Nazareth is not the problem? It's that all of a sudden these people are waking up to the truth of, kind of like who God is and who they are. And this is going to cause problems in our established system of control and order. And you see that at the Roman level, you see that at the Jewish leadership level. When people become empowered, and that's what Jesus was doing, was empowering his people. And what does that do to change a person's perception about, what does that mean in terms of my life? And, who do I listen to? Who do I not listen to? Kind of thing. Dad, you made the quote about, or the point about, people commenting on, kind of what's going on. And I think of our culture today, and, the whole just walk away, when somebody makes a comment on a post, whether it's TikTok or Twitter or Instagram or whatever, and you don't agree with what they say, you can just walk away. But no, we want to jump in and, make some kind of comment about why we're right and they're wrong. And Jesus was like, no, you can just walk away. Dust, like Bob, you said, dust the feet off, dust the feet off, and walk away. Off your shoes, and kick the dust off your shoes, and walk away. Yeah. And that's okay. So it really is looking at that going, wow, Solomon said there's nothing new under the sun. They were dealing with the same kinds of issues then as we are today. How do you deal with it?
Those are, on that setup. So there was a line that Jarius says when he and Joseph are talking. It says, "I would sooner be unborn than ignore the contents of these letters."
Mm-hmm.
So he wasn't ready. We could not share the information going forward. We could not do something. However, I cannot undo what I know, and that impact of what I know and how that will engage with me going forward. Me personally, this is Bob personally, I have challenges with empowerment. Okay, this is Bob. Okay, and the reason I say that is that they were not like the people, once it was waking up to the thought of Messiah. I get it. Okay, and trust me, people struggle with that a lot, and we know that is Simon's big thing, is that he's expecting Messiah, and he's going, we're making it harder on ourselves if we make waves, knowing we're going to have a big overthrow anyways, right? We know this is going to, in their mind, we know this is going to happen. And as the people come up, they realize that they're in Messiah. They think they have the returning, conquering king. And we're not in Jerusalem yet, so we'll get there. But in this point, we know that that's the prevalent mindset.
Right.
Rome doesn't understand that. Rome has no clue. Okay. Like you mentioned, the control factor with the Sanhedrin, the power plays at the time, and this particular one where you have the inner sanctums fighting with each other. You have Pharisees arguing with Pharisees. You have Pharisees arguing with Sadducees. And then you have houses that are split and are at each other's pieces. So there's a lot of power conflict. Like we said, we witnessed this particular plea with the Sanhedrin, is that, okay, yeah, it's political, where we've set a tone. It's not really about Jesus at this point. He's being used for an agenda, and
Right.
doesn't not going to change what Jesus is doing and the impact and power he's going to have, and what you think was an important decision back then, and I'd argue to say that that's lost to antiquity than what we see, going forward. But we had a lot within everybody. We had personal conflict, lack of communication, expectations. Those are big words that cause disruption with these men and their lives. And when they're sitting around the room, and you'd think a little bit that we would have a, did you get what happened? Really wasn't quite the story, was it? That discussion in that room was very awkward, very and Simon, of course, blowing up and taking the walk, and we'll talk about his visit later.
Well, I think it's interesting that with Simon, there's a whole nother real life situation going on with he and Eden. Very real. I mean, it's so man thing. He walks in, all he was thinking about is himself. I'm tired. I'm just going to take a nap. And then tonight after dinner, and he's got the whole thing planned out. And she has her own thing. She lost a baby, all these kinds of things. So you've got these real life experiences going on with these huge storytelling, as he's giving them a preview of what life is going to be like after he dies and they're all alone. Maybe they're not doing miracles. Maybe they are doing miracles. But no matter what, they're going to run into people that don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, what? Kick the dust off your shoes, brush it off, walk on. And so there's all kinds of stories inside the story that fascinated me.
Folks, we did jump a little ahead. You don't know about something my dad said, so we're not there yet. So you're gonna go, she what? And you'll go, we'll get there. There's another episode. You'll find out more.
Yeah.
Beware, because you're going, you just watched that and that's not what you saw. It's because you haven't seen it yet. The disciples, Jimmy, the disciples, they're conflicted. They're still expecting Messiah to take over. Okay. And we see that in that interaction. And they're concerned about the making waves, and they're concerned about extending business and doing those kind of things. Is that something that we think we see even in our modern church challenges today about those kind of things?
Yes.
Okay.
Done. Okay, go on.
Deep thought contemplation next. Yeah. Meaning it's just one of those awkward things that we kind of struggle with. That and then if we're inside our communities, right, and church and life, I think there should be more blending of the two rather than separation. But in the setups and the lives being lived during those kind of things, that making waves or asking questions, because part of the thing that they're doing is they're asking questions. They do a lot of that. Notice that Eden says, You could just ask Jesus when he gets here, you know, because they're struggling with a lot of questions, and that obviously they need Jesus to help them with some of the answers that they're working through. Okay, so there was one phrase I want to leave with this for this evening, and that was, and I think it was Philip that said it, and it was soon, the most imprecise word. And I chuckled and said, yeah, we hear that a lot in Scripture. Soon, how soon? Yeah. They, as we see, are struggling with what does that mean? What is soon? Will we get our answer soon? Will we see him do more soon? They had been empowered. I'll use that word, James. Empowered with some gifts to go perform miracles. Mm-hmm. And the Holy Spirit, the Ruach is in full bloom there. Yeah. With them, walking with them, empowering them through as this all plays out. They aren't fully aware of the whys and the whos, because there's a one questioner: can you do this and not understand it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're definitely going to get there on that understanding. Are we comfortable sometimes doing things and not understanding why? And that's careful, because that's another question. That's not, that's going to bring us
Something
up.
we can talk about next week.
Yeah.
Is that Big James? He says, you gave us power, but no understanding.
Right.
Yeah.
So exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Yeah. We need to address that. Okay. Any other last wrap-ups, Dad?
No, I'm good.
No,
Quick,
I
easy?
think this is probably a good step away, and we'll come back at it next time.
Step away from the table slowly. Put your
Smile and
hands,
wave, boy.
Smile and wave. There you go. These are these kind of things, people, that are worth discussing. And as I put it, we're the three of us are chatting here. We're having a discussion amongst ourselves. That you talk amongst yourselves. Go ask those questions, and find out what the responses are. Please be aware that this is a story. It does have biblical elements weaved in and out. It is definitely themed biblically, but just be aware of what's in the actual story and what Dallas has brought to that. Because don't stick your stake in the ground over something that. Just make sure you know the story. Read the book, okay? And this makes this fun. So, thank you for being with us tonight with these two other wonderful gentlemen. We love being family together, and we love sharing this with you. So, thanks for being with us tonight, again, on an episode of Sons of the Father on the Dusty Feet.